Good afternoon. Welcome, everyone. My name is Trisha Ocona Francis. I'm a real estate professional, and today we're going to talk about real estate, home buying, and investing the right way. There are so many scams out there, so many of us want to get into home ownership, or if we're already a homeowner, we want to go into investing, and we want to make sure that we do it right. So how do we do it right? So before we start, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about myself and why I do what I do and I know what I know. I am the broker and owner of Real Estate Ocona in New York City. My office is downtown Manhattan in Cadman Plaza. I've been a broker for over 16 years. I am also licensed in New Jersey, Georgia, and Pennsylvania. I just came from a Sotheby's in Alpine, New Jersey, which is rated the wealthiest town in the country. Medgar Evers College, I teach real estate at Medgar Evers College. I'm an educator. That's where a lot of my passion is to educate a lot of people who don't know real estate. I remember taking my course with my mom many, many years ago, and she said, if I knew then what I knew now, I wouldn't have bought our house. I would have bought a house, but I wouldn't have bought our house, because she realized the attorney robbed her, the real estate agent robbed her, the mortgage person robbed her, because after learning all the education that she did, she realized she did not go about it the right way. I also have spoken on Hot 97, Street Soldiers with Lisa Evers. I've been interviewed on Here and Now with Sandra Bookman on ABC7. I've spoken across the country at the National Association of Realtors conventions in Orlando, in San Francisco, all over the country. I am also an appointed member of the New York State Department of State Real Estate Board, which means I'm appointed by the governor. There are 5 brokers in the whole state of New York that makes the rules and regulations of New York State real estate, and I am one of them. We meet 4 times a year in Albany, and we just create all the rules that real estate agents must follow. Write for the Huffington Post business section. I do the YPN Lounge. Just quite a few things, but this just helps me give you better education. Between me teaching and sitting on the board, I just try to get all the information to give the people what it really means to know about real estate. Why? Why do I do this? Because I believe that I need to turn renters into homeowners and homeowners into investors. Many of you may be renters. How do you become a homeowner? How do you stop paying that rent and become a homeowner? And if you are a homeowner, how do you start getting more assets and more property and turn into investors? So, my goal is to help you achieve your real estate goal. Whatever your personal real estate goal is, you may want to rent forever, but also how do you rent properly? You may want to buy your first home. How do you buy your first home? You may want to invest. How do you invest? And that's my goal, helping you achieve your real estate goals. First of all, before we get into the worksheet, I just want to go into the value of real estate. Some people don't really understand how valuable real estate is. Anyone who gets any type of money, the first thing they do is they invest it in real estate, because the value always goes up. So we have to think every single thing is real estate. This building is real estate. Millions of dollars, right? Long-standing asset. A home has been around forever. It's an investment, and it's a legacy builder. Many people get into real estate because they want to have something to leave off for their family. Everyone with wealth goes into real estate. Who profits off of your home? You or someone else? How to profit? Appreciation? Why do people get into real estate? And how to get into real estate. These are some of the things I'm going to cover. First of all, what is real estate? It may sound so simple, but I've been teaching for over 8 years, and many people come into my class, some people who own over 7 homes and still don't understand what real estate really is. It's land plus anything that's permanently attached to it, including buildings, sheds, and other items attached to the structure. That is the legal definition of what real estate is. And as simple as this may sound, every single thing around us is in real estate. So why aren't more of us investing into real estate? The parking lot, the school, the place of worship, the building, the house, the court, all of these things are real estate, and all of these things are worth something. Think about it. They're at home, They're working, they're paying bills. They go shopping, right? They're spending their money in shopping. Then the people that are shopping, what I'm trying to get to is everything revolves around real estate. If these people don't shop, then the store clerk doesn't have a job. The truck driver cannot put stuff on the truck. These people cannot work in the factory. This lady cannot work in her office. And the whole point of the matter is, what is the first bill that we pay every month? Housing. That's the first bill that we pay every month. And if we cannot afford our housing bill, then this whole cycle cannot happen. If we cannot afford to pay our rent or afford to pay our mortgage, we don't go shopping. And then this whole cycle doesn't happen. So it's very important that whether you're renting, you own, or you're investing, that you're doing it properly so you don't cause any hardship later on. Real estate is the number one asset across the board. Real estate has always been around. Just think about it. This particular home was around in 1930. It cost maybe $35,000. 1950, $70,000. 1970, $110,000. 1990, $170,000. 2010, $300,000. Right? Every year it goes up and up and up. In the year 2020, which property do you think will hold its value or appreciate for someone who buys it today? Right? We have a lot of young kids buying sneakers. We have people buying cars. But the only thing that's going to go up in value is the property. So the question is, do you profit off of real estate, or does someone else profit off of you? Are you paying rent, or are you collecting rent, or are you paying a mortgage? What are 3 ways that you profit off of real estate? Appreciation, cash flow, and flipping. Appreciation, we spoke about that house a while ago. Every single year, if this person bought it in the family since 1920, over 90 years, it would have appreciated this much money. Cash flow, if you have an investment property, let's say you have a parking space, cell phone tower, laundry, income. This is how much you're netting monthly. And this is how much you can net annually on an investment property. And then some people do flipping. That's another form of real estate, right? They buy low, they fix it up, and they sell it higher. The profit off of that house, $75,000. What are the 3 main reasons that people get into real estate? Right? I've been teaching, like I said, for over 8 years. I've taught hundreds of students who come into my classroom and they want to get into real estate for some reason. Passion, they just love it. Free time, they have time to do other things. And money. Money. Okay, so now we're going to get into the real learning. How do you buy your property? How do you invest your property without the scams, without people trying to rip you off? Real estate is not easy. Real estate is like a whole different language. I'm in real estate, and if I ever go to a real estate event, or you hear a totally different language, and if you don't understand the language, people just tell you whatever. I get phone calls every single day of people who bought homes and were scammed in some way because they didn't have the knowledge and they just trusted the person they were dealing with, whether they're a real estate agent, their mortgage person, even their attorney. So the more you know, the better you are when you go into the situation. Me personally, I like to educate the people before I help them. So these are some of the things that we're going to learn throughout this process. You have a paper. Now, this paper is for you. It's for you to sit down and take notes for yourself and decide within yourself if you're ready to buy, when do you want to buy, and what questions you need to ask yourself before you even think about buying. Now, the average real estate agent that you call up is not going to do this. But I think it's important that if more people do this, we will have less foreclosures. Do you know right now in New York City, there are over 30,000 people facing foreclosure? 30,000 people. Why? Because they got into real estate and they didn't plan properly, they weren't educated, and they weren't guided right. So it's important that you know these things. First, your credit. Many of you may already know what your credit is. And that means, you know what? You're one step ahead of it. But for those of you who do not, or even if you do, just think about it. What do I think my credit is? Sometimes we think our credit is a totally different number than what it really is. Sometimes it's higher than we think and it's much lower, or sometimes we think it's so bad and really it's not that bad. So think to yourself, what do I think my credit is? Also, I want you to look at your long-term debt. What is your long-term debt? Because when you go to get a loan, a mortgage loan, they're going to ask you these questions. They're going to look at these things on your credit report. Long-term debt, credit cards. Not credit cards, car notes. Do you have a car note? If you're thinking about buying, hold off on buying that car for a little bit. But if you have one on there, you need to calculate that. Because they're going to look at your income to your debt and see how much money you have available. Because at the end of the month, they want to know, can you pay this loan or are you going to pay this car note? A lot of people will pay the car note first because they don't want the repo man to come for the car. But the bank is not going to put you on a loan that you can't afford, or you hope not. Also, do you have any other mortgages? And then student loans. Now, student loans don't disqualify you from buying a house, but you want to look at your student loans. They want to make sure that, student loans can't go away. So if they're giving you a loan, they want to make sure that you can cover the loan and the mortgage payment at the same time. Okay? Credit cards. Do you have any credit cards? Nobody says you have to pay off all your credit cards, but you want to make sure that they're on time and you want to make sure that the balance is not as high. So if your credit card is a $5,000 credit card, you don't want to be at $4,000. You want to be below half, and also on time. Negative history. Use this form to write down any negative history you may have on your credit. Because that is something that's not going to go away. When you try to go to a bank and get a loan, they're going to look at these things. They're going to ask you, what's up with this? What's up with that? Make sure it's not in judgment. Call up those companies. A lot of people go to these credit repair companies. I don't advise it. A lot of these credit repair companies, they're scams. Unless you go to a nonprofit agency, don't do it. They're not doing nothing you can't do yourself. Basically, when you go to the credit report, you can go and dispute these credit ratings, okay? Sometimes you just have to pay it off. Sometimes if you can't pay it off fully, you could do a settlement. But a settlement will show, it won't be as great as paying it off because it shows that you settled, but at least it's off your credit as well. All I'm saying to you is you have to look at these things before you start to go buy a house, because the loan officer will look at them. You also may not know that maybe somebody's using your credit that you didn't know. I spoke to this gentleman, and his father, who has the same name as him, was using his credit. Yeah? So he had no idea because he had not checked his credit report. So now he's coming to go buy a house, and he's seeing this credit. I know another guy had not used his credit, had not checked his credit, saw a student loan on his credit. I couldn't believe it. I could not believe he had a student loan on his credit. And he didn't go to college. So you need to check and make sure that those things that are on your credit. Also, things on your credit cannot be there for longer than 7 years once they're finished. So if somebody is keeping something on your credit, you need to dispute it. Disputing it is free. Just take the time. The websites are so much easier now. You can just put in what the issue is. And by law, I'm not a lawyer, but by law, they have to remove it off your credit for a certain amount of days while they contact the company and find out if it's valid or not. After you write down what you think your credit is, find out what your credit really is now, right? Credit scores go between 500 and 800. Obviously, 500 is really, really bad. 800 is really, really good. You have 800, you can walk into any bank and say, give me what I want, okay? The three major credit companies are TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian. And if you go to annualcreditreport.com, you can get a free credit report every single year. What I personally do is I subscribe to one of these, and it gives me an alert every time my credit goes up, every time my credit goes down, anytime someone runs my credit. Anything that happens to my credit, I get a notice. And I can get my credit report anytime I want. So for a couple bucks a month, you can get one of those.
May I ask a question?
Yes, absolutely.
I have a couple of credit cards I don't really use. I use them once every few months just so that they stay active, they don't go dormant. But given that I have a lot of credit that's available to me that I'm not using, is that actually hurting my credit score, or is that helpful?
It can, a loan officer will look at that, and it can hurt because they can give you a loan today for a house for, like, let's say $800,000, and their fear is that the next day you max it out with furniture or whatever, and now you've put yourself in debt that's going to hurt you from paying your loan. So yes, it can hurt a little bit, but until you are really ready, you don't have to close it, because when you speak to a loan officer, as long as they're paid and everything, loan officer will probably just say, hey, close this one, close that one, close that one, and that's not a big deal.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Okay. Oh. Your money. You will need money to buy a house, right? I know sometimes you can go to a car dealership and they say, 0% down, 0% financing. No, when you buy a house, you will need money. So this is something on the worksheet for you to look at yourself and say, how much money do I have saved up? How much money can I put towards my house? You may have a 401k plan, a retirement plan. Well, many people don't know, with your 401k plan, you're allowed to take $10,000 out your retirement money without penalty for the purchase of a house. Yes?
Is it possible to borrow money from your own 401k?
You can. Everyone is different, so you have to check with your particular one, but I do know you can take $10,000 without penalty, but it has to be for the purchase of a home. Okay?
It has to be for
The $10,000 has to be for the purchase of a home. Gifts. Yes. Sorry. Go ahead. I've seen people do it separately. I think it's per person's 401k. Yes.
That 10K, is that for your primary residency? Can you use it for like an investment property?
Primary. But like I said, check with your, because I've seen so many different 401ks, and they call it 413 sometimes, have different provisions, so check with that one. Gifts. Maybe you just got married and your parents are giving you money to buy a house. I know a couple, and the husband's father had silver coins, and he traded them in, and he took the money and he split it between his two sons, and that's what they used to buy the house. Here's the thing with gifts. They're going to trace where that person got the money from, okay? Because they want to avoid any money laundering. So if someone is giving you a gift, a lot of times they're going to have to sign an affidavit that this was a gift, also that it was not a loan. The bank wants to make sure that they're not giving you this money, and then you have to pay it back on top of that loan. So if it is a gift, they're going to have to say it's a gift, and if there's a gift, it's going to go into your account, and they're going to have to trace where that person got it from, because the IRS wants all that reported. And if you have any other money, if you have anything else, yes. It depends on, you're allowed, depending on who you're getting it from. I'm not an accountant, but it depends on who you're getting it from and how much it is, right? But if they do give you, they're basically just checking to make sure that this wasn't drug money under the mattress. So, but other than that, if it's like $10,000, it could be from a parent, right? So a parent is allowed to give you a certain amount of gift. But also, my disclaimer is check with your accountant. Any other money? I know a new couple who was getting ready, they were selling their car so they could have more money to buy their house. Okay? How much money will you really need? Well, it depends. If you're going an FHA first-time home buyer loan, your first time buying a home, you're getting an FHA loan, you need 3.5%. 3.5% of whatever the loan is. That's what you're gonna need for the house, okay? Conventional, or if you're a vet, you can get a VA loan. These are the type of loans that you should explore with the mortgage person that you're dealing with to see what rates they have, what programs they have. There are many different types of loans. But FHA, just to know, is a first-time home buyer loan, 3.5%. You also need closing costs. Closing costs is going to pay for the filing fees. It's going to pay for your attorney. Closing costs is anywhere between 4 to 6% of the loan. That give or take what if you want to calculate how much money you will need. So whatever the purchase price of your home, 3.5% of that will be your down payment. About 4 to 6% of that will be for your closing costs. How much is the value of your home is going to be? That depends on what the bank qualifies you for based on your income, based on your debt. Okay? You also have something called PMI. PMI is if you purchase a home and you put down, now the average for FHA is 3.5%. But if you put down less than 20%, which 3.5% is, you are considered a risk to the bank. Which means that, God forbid you were to foreclose, there's a short margin to sell the home back. If you put down less than 20% of the loan, the bank will charge you PMI. That is an insurance to protect them in case you default on your loan. But with all this training, you won't do that. Okay? Owner-occupant versus investment, that's something else. If you get a first-time home buyer loan, you have to live there. It's to help people become homeowners, so you have to live there. There's also loans for investors. So if you have a home already, you don't plan to live there, and this is just going to be an investment home, you can do that. I also want to take a second to let you understand what's the difference between a banker and a broker. I learned this the hard way. When you go for a loan, find out from the person, are you a banker or are you a broker? A banker is the person with the money. They're the one lending you directly. A broker is the one shopping the loan for you. So what does that mean? They come with a cost. Why would someone go to a broker versus a banker? Maybe your income is not that high. Maybe your credit is not that great. So the broker gathers all your information and shops it out to different banks. Believe it or not, you are paying that broker for that service. So your closing cost is going to be high. I've seen people pay up to $20,000 for that broker in their closing costs and not realize they were paying that broker while their closing cost was so high. A banker would be going up to Chase, Bank of America, Wells Fargo. One of these banks, that would be a banker, okay? A broker would be another company who's shopping it for you. Yes?
3.5% and 20%. I don't understand.
Okay, so an FHA loan is a first-time homebuyer loan, and in order as an incentive to become a first-time homebuyer, you only have to put down 3.5% of the loan as your down payment, as your part of the investment. Why the bank makes you do an investment? Because, you know, if someone is asking you to go into business with them, and they're saying, hey, can I borrow 90 grand? You're gonna say, well, how much money are you putting up? So that's why the bank wants you to put up something. So you're putting up 3.5%. Now, you're still considered a risk because you only put up 3.5%. If you put up 20%, you're no longer a risk because if you default on the loan and the bank has to sell it at auction in a foreclosure, they still have this 20% cushion that they can make it back with. 3.5%, anything could happen. The market could drop, the property could need repairs, and they may go underwater. So that's why if you put down less than 20%, they make you pay PMI, premium mortgage insurance, to cover them and protect them in case you default. Yes?
And then in the case you're a first house buyer and you pay 20%, then you don't need to pay the PMI anymore.
Correct. Now, it depends. They changed the law. So now, on an FHA loan, the PMI is for the life of the loan. It never was like that. On a conventional loan, so in order to, if you get an FHA loan, if you want to get out of the PMI, because PMI could be like $450 a month added to your loan. If you want to get out of the PMI, you would have to refinance out the loan. On conventional, once you get 20% in equity, which means either you've paid down your mortgage or the value of your house has gone up, you can call them up and say, I'm 20%, take off my PMI. But you have to call them because they won't take it off on themselves. Okay? Yes?
To bank for mortgage and go to broker for mortgage?
Absolutely. Like I said, the only reason people go to a broker is because they don't have that much income or their credit is not that great. But you have to pay them for their service. Whereas a banker, you're going directly to the person who has the entity that has the money. So what's a good way to do it is a lot of times, you're shopping and people run your credit. Every time you run your credit rating goes a little bit down. They do understand that you're shopping, so they give you a little way, but you want to make sure that 1 or 2 points don't really hurt you. Go to annualcreditreport.com, get a copy of your credit report, do the task that I gave you, and go to them and say, listen, this is my credit, this is my score, what can you do for me? Do not pull my credit. Because they pull your credit, it would be a hard pull, and you could lose a point or two every time somebody pulls your credit. Because what it looks like is you're just shopping around for credit. Yes?
Is there any online resource where I can compare 10 bank rates before actually going to a city or something?
What their rates are? Yeah, there's a website like.
Bankrate.com. And they don't know my credit, I just check. No, it just compares the rates of credit, what they're offering.
That's Abby on top, my assistant. Okay, so here, yes. I don't really, I don't endorse any particular bank, right? I've seen some, do good, some do bad. I think what you just need to do is just at the end of the day, make sure that they are fulfilling what you need, right? The interest rate, make sure the interest rate is something you're comfortable with. Make sure the down payment, make sure all those things stand. And then make sure you have a really good real estate agent and a real estate attorney who is going to be with you throughout the process to make sure that the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. Okay, these are questions to ask yourself also when you're starting to buy. A lot of people don't do this until the last minute. Who do I want to buy with? You got to be careful who you want to buy with. Because, buying with someone is like a marriage. Once you're in, you're in. And in order to get out, either through separation or even death, you have to figure out, you have to plan ahead, is this somebody I want to buy with? Okay? How soon do I want to buy? I spoke to a lady the other day, and she said she's been looking for a house for a year. And she's not ready to buy then. Because the market is changing. The value of a home last year is different from the value of a home this year. So if you do want to buy, you need to look at when do I want to buy. You may not be ready to buy now, but that's why this handout is so important, because it's preparing you for when you do want to buy. You don't want to wake up one day and say, you know what, I'm ready to buy, and then you missed all these steps. So it's important to start with these steps before you say, I'm going to buy, right? You're going to need to take some serious steps in order to start purchasing your home. If you don't have enough saved, you're going to have to save, right? You're going to have to, pull back on the movies or the clothes or whatever you want to do. You're going to have to make commitments. And then when you purchase, you're going to have commitments. Some people don't know that when you purchase a home, not only do you have the home loan you got to pay, you have interest on the loan. It's called PITI, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance you have to pay on the home. Plus you have utilities. New York City, we have water as well. You have property maintenance. These are all things that are not factored in when you're renting. So you have to make sure that you're able to do those things. Another thing that when you get a loan, what they look for, They look that you have a steady income. You all have great jobs. That's what they're looking for because they want to know that you are going to be consistent with paying this loan. If you have any degrees, they want to look at that as well, right? God forbid you lose your job, they know that you're employable. These are things that they want to look at. They're going to want to look at your tax returns 2 to 3 years out, right? Let's say you weren't here before, you weren't here 6 months ago, but you were working somewhere else doing the same thing that you do. That's okay, because they want to know that you're not jumping around from industry to industry, that you're in the same industry. Maybe you've changed companies, but you're in the same industry, which means that you're consistent. Now, question, in a real estate transaction, who does the real estate agent work for? Does anyone know the answer to this? Yes.
Since we're talking about the buyer or the seller's agent.
Right. You heard what he said? Depends on who you're talking about. Most people think that the real estate agent works for the seller. Wrong. The real estate agent works for whoever is hired. So, someone can be a buyer, and I can work for that buyer. And I'm working for that buyer, trying to find that buyer the best house for the cheapest price. Or I can work for the seller. And at that point, I'm helping the seller sell their home for the most money. Whoever you work for doesn't determine who pays you. That's a little secret that I'm going to tell you that real estate agents won't tell you. Yes?
My question, so an agent gets paid like percentage of the deal.
Yes.
So what's the incentive for the buyer agents to find the lower price? Because their percentage will be lower as well.
Good question. They don't have an incentive, right? His question is, if a real estate agent is paid by commission, why would they help a buyer find the cheapest house? Most of the time they won't. I would, because I do this because I like doing this. But my whole job is, like I told you from the beginning, is to help people achieve their real estate goals, right? And if your real estate goal is to get the best house at the cheapest price negotiated properly, then that's what I'm going to do. But you're absolutely right. Most real estate agents will not try to find the cheapest house because they know that the more expensive they help you buy this house for, the bigger their commission will be. Absolutely. Okay? So the one who hired the agent, yes.
So just a follow-up to that.
Yes.
Too. So what's the incentive for me then as a buyer when I see a property listing?
Good
Why
question.
don't I just go directly to that property?
Good question.
To that real estate agent and say, we have 2 ways we could do this. I can bring in my real estate agent and you can half your commission, or I can work with you and you can get double what you're gonna get. Why don't we play nice? Like,
Okay.
people do that?
We're gonna go right into that right now. The seller's agent. When you go onto these real estate websites and you see these houses for sale, and you click that house and you call up that real estate agent, guess what? That real estate agent is working for the seller. So that term that the police says, anything you say or do can and will be held against you, is exactly what's happening. Any single thing you tell that agent who is working for that seller, they will use against you. So, you tell them you just won the lotto. What you think they're gonna do? They're gonna tell the seller you won the lotto. You tell them that you are approved for $500,000. This house that you want is $450,000. You put in an offer for $420,000. They're gonna tell the seller, he's approved for $500,000. He can come up. They're not working for you. They're working for their seller. Now, a buyer's agent. So just to go back, what are they doing? When you're working for the seller, you're helping that seller market their house, show their house, find a qualified buyer, approve the buyers, right? That's what you're trying to do. When you're working for a buyer, We're helping you shop for a house. You may find houses you like and send to the agent. The agent is going to research that house. The agent is going to find out any secrets about that house. What if that house is in foreclosure? What if the asking price of that house is $799, but that person is in foreclosure for $500,000 and needs to be out in 2 months? Do you need to offer $799? No. That's what that real estate agent is going to do. I showed a house last year. The real estate agent who works for the seller never showed up. I came with my clients who were the buyers. When I opened the door, the old woman, very sweet and nice, her husband was sitting on the sofa. What do you think she told me the whole way? My knees, my knees, my knees. I can't go up these stairs anymore. You like the house? You want to buy the house? How much you want to buy the house for? Can you buy the house? Please buy the house. I turned to my clients, I said, we can offer whatever you want. They gotta go. Because I was working for my buyer, right? Because they were telling all the information. And that's why when you have somebody working for the seller and you have somebody working for the buyer, it's almost like two lawyers. Listen, I tell my clients, don't say a thing. Let me talk. I was showing a condo the other day, and the agent asked my client, so, what do you do? I said, talk to me. and then he says, yeah, so the bathroom is up there. He says, could you please tell your client that the bathroom is up? Like, he made a joke about it the whole time. But listen, I'm very serious about that. Talk to me. Because anything you say will be you. And a lot of real estate agents don't know that. Because matter of fact, when we were walking into the condo, he collected his client, the seller, I guess it doesn't live there anymore. And he collected the mail. And he said, oh man, my client got to go to court. And we're looking at him like, your client got to go to court? Great, you just gave me a piece of information. Now I have to research it and find out why your client has to go to court. And maybe now I don't have to offer you what you're asking because your client has to go to court. Yes?
I don't know if you're going to get into this later, but like for properties that are like going to foreclosure, like what is the process for that?
I have it at the end if we have extra time, but I kept it as a backup.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
Is it a good idea to get pre-approvals at multiple price points then?
Pre-approvals at multiple price points. You should get a pre-approval at what you could afford. Because I've seen loan officers do that. How much do you want the loan for? How much do you want the loan for? How much can they afford? So do it at what now if they approve you for $800,000, that doesn't mean you could go at $800,000. I'm going to get to that in a few minutes. Go at what you feel you can afford. You had a question? Yes.
So there's a bit of a difficult game there. Let's say I come in with an all-cash offer.
Right.
That's something ideally I'd want to disclose to the seller because they know they can trust. I'm not going to fail on that. But at the same time, it's kind of telling them something too. How do you balance, showing yourself as somebody who can afford to actually go through with the purchase, yet without saying, without disclosing that there's no, how can I say, that you've got a limited budget?
One, you need a representative to do that for you. Because the other agents know how to pick, like I know, depending on what side, like I can work on either side. I can work on the seller side or I can work on the buyer side. Depending on the side I'm working on, I know how to pick and ask the questions.
How would you present that situation? You say, I've got a buyer, he's got an all-cash offer. The seller is like, okay, this is awesome, right? But then that also tells them that you might be
Loaded?
A bit higher than you otherwise would.
Not really, because this is what I do. If my client has a pre-approval or a bank statement, I had a client that had a bank statement of $22 million on the statement. I'm not going to send them over a $22 million. We got a statement that shows less money. So they don't really see how much money you're really working with. So this is my offer, and then also justify why you're giving this offer. So the house may be asking $900,000, but you're only offering $8,000. And you're saying, well, I'm offering $8,000 because I'm giving all cash. All I need is a clear title. I can close in 30 days, so that should be an incentive for you. You don't have to wait for someone who may not qualify. And 2, listen, I need to change the boiler. I need to change the roof. These are the reasons why I'm offering less. So you have to justify. Now, once again, I said you need a representative because the representative knows how to talk to the person, right? So this woman who came and said her knees, if her representative was there, if I was representing her, I would have said, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, please sit your butt down. Don't say a word. Just sit still, right? But they didn't do that. So now I saw what was wrong, and I was able to use that. Or if I go show a house and the real estate agent's not there, right? They just say whatever they want. Sometimes I'll go up to another real estate agent who I can tell doesn't have that much knowledge and say, how much will the owners take? So the house is asking $500,000, and you just say, how much will the owners will take? And they say, well, you know, the owners will take $450,000. And I'm like, who do you work for? You're supposed to be getting the owner the most money. Why do they do that? Because they're looking for a quick, fast deal. The correct answer to say is, the owner will take $500,000, put in an offer, right? If I'm working for the seller. Okay, so you have buyer's agent. And then you have fiduciary responsibilities. So there's an agency disclosure form that a real estate agent is supposed to present to you as soon as they meet you. They're supposed to present this form to you. It's not a contract. It will say big and bold, not a contract. It's if you're renting an apartment or if you're buying a house, selling, and it's a disclosure form. State law says that they must sign it just to prove that they presented it to you, because most people don't know who works for them. A lot of times they think the person they call when they look online is the person that works for them. You may see a real estate agent, and one Sunday you see 10 houses with that real estate agent. You talk about children, you talk about family, and then that real estate agent shows you one of their listings with their seller. You think that agent works for you because you spend the whole Sunday together, when really still that agent works for the seller. So that disclosure form completely tells you who they work for, so now you know to keep your mouth zip or get your own buyer representation. How do you remember the fiduciary responsibilities? Old car. It spells old car. This is how I teach it when I teach it in the college. Obedience. And this is for the seller or the buyer's agent. The person that you hire, the real estate agent that you hire, has to be obedient to you, right? As long as not discrimination, they have to be obedient and follow, whatever. If you tell them to put in an offer for $350,000, they can't put in an offer for $355,000. They have to, go with what you say. Loyalty, they're loyal to you. They can't be going back and forth between the buyer and the seller, right? They owe you all that respect. Disclosure. Anything they know, they got to disclose to you. Now, when you buy a house, if there's something wrong with the house, by law, they must disclose that to you. They're not allowed to sell you a lemon without telling you it's a lemon. That must be disclosed automatically. But if I'm working for a buyer and I find out some good juice about the seller, I'm going to let the buyer know. That's what they're supposed to do. Confidentiality, some people don't want. I had a client a while ago who did not want anyone. A neighbor was buying the house. She didn't want anyone to know that she was buying the house because she didn't want the people on the block to know that she was buying the house. She didn't even want the tenants to know she was buying the house. So confidentiality is very, very important. You also get a lot of people's information sometimes. The loan officer gets your social security number, your income, but I get a lot of information, right? I helped a friend of mine and his wife buy a house, and his wife is pretty famous. And I know how much she makes because I helped them buy their house, right? That's confidentiality, right? So my father would come to me and be like, so how much was their house? I'd be like, none of your business. You can't tell them because that's between you and them. Accountability. People are going to give you things. They're going to give you maybe some documents. You have to make sure that you're accountable for everything and that you don't turn around later and say, oh, I lost that. Could you send that to me again, please? You want to make sure you have that. And reasonable care means that the real estate agent knows what they're doing, that they understand real estate. When I teach, I always tell my students, a lot of people teach to pass the test. I teach you to teach you real estate. So it's very important that the real estate agent you work with understands the dynamics of real estate, so they can tell whether we're not roofers, we're not plumbers, but they can tell that there's a leak. Hey, you need to have a roofer check that out. Or that signs of termites, you need to have somebody look at these termites. That's what someone is supposed to be doing as a real estate agent. Okay? Also, back to the worksheet that you have. Now, You went and got qualified for a loan, right? This is to answer your question. They qualify you for $800,000. That comes to $5,000 a month. Am I comfortable with that number? Just because the bank says that you are qualified for a certain loan does not mean you have to max it out. After you do this, when my clients come to me with a pre-approval from the bank, I tell them to sit down and do a personal budget now. Look at your income, look at your expenses, and figure out now personally, do you think you can cover $5,000 a month? And if you think you can't, then bring it down to the number that you can. Because they loan you all this money, it's like you get a credit card for $30,000. You don't have to use that credit card for $30,000. Use what you want. Location. By law, real estate agents cannot put you into an area. You have to decide what neighborhood you want to go to. So you need to sit down and figure out what location you want to live in. Maybe where you live now, maybe where you know friends are. Drive around, ride around, walk around, and figure out what neighborhood it is that you want to go to. How many units do you, yes?
Question. From what I hear, being in a good school district increases the price of the property quite significantly. I just want to know your thoughts on those, and is it a big difference between, say, Manhattan or Brooklyn and New Jersey, or like what would be some recommendations around that?
Absolutely. You have, if it's a good school district, yeah, the value is going to go up. I sold a home where everyone that came to see that home, their whole purpose for buying that home was because of the school district, because they couldn't get their children to that school unless they lived in that neighborhood, and that raised the value. So absolutely, that's something that a lot of people, if you're planning on having children, even if you just want a good value, a good resale value in a house, that may be something you want to look at.
Are there any other points for a good resale value? I'm just trying to think,
A good resale value are I study real estate every single day. So I look at Department of City Planning with zoning. I look at what the mayor's doing, right? What neighborhoods are they revitalizing? What's coming up? Obviously, you know, in Brooklyn, you have the Barclays Center coming up. You have the 7 train in Manhattan. So these are things you need to look at. Where are they rezoning? Where are they building shopping malls? These are things that you have to look at and decide, you know, that's going to be another hot spot of where people want to live. People want to live near the train station, right? People want to live near the attractions. So that's where you have to look at. Yes.
So you're gonna talk about some of like the New York specific
Locations?
thing, yeah, because we've got like 9 minutes.
Oh,
left.
I'm sorry.
So
Okay.
It's like, I look at the taxes and things like that are different for like, I don't know, 4-story buildings versus, there's like all these like crazy things. I just moved to New York.
Okay.
What are the New York things that like you got to know about?
Be a little bit more specific in your question.
Yeah, like taxes, property taxes.
How to find out property tax?
Yeah, I mean, there's like a whole bunch of crazy things that like you can read about.
Condos versus co-ops.
Oh, you going into a whole course. This course is, my course is I tried to bring all this course into 1 hour. Co-ops and condos, condos you own it, co-ops you don't own it. You own a share in the building, but your maintenance is more money in the co-op because your maintenance is going towards the underwriting mortgage over the building. Property tax, you can go to Department of Finance to find out property tax on any property. As far as abatements go, a lot of the new developments are giving incentives, so they do have tax abatements that are great that you can take advantage of. It also depends on the neighborhood. I just spoke about revitalization. So the city is giving a lot of developers in certain neighborhoods incentives in order to revitalize those neighborhoods. So it all depends. I'm gonna just go real quick, put my contact. You could always email me if you have any question further, okay? Also, any features that you have on the home that you're looking for. Once you found your home, you have to make sure that you or the real estate professional and the attorney that you have. Now, an attorney is not enough because an attorney, all they do is, they do a lot of work, right? but they never see the house. They don't know what you're interested in. So you do need someone to help you research. You contact their attorney once you found a house, and they're gonna work with the other attorney to put the legal language together. But what you need to do is get the research done. Find out what's going on with that house, right? Find out if there was any fires ever in that house. Find out if that house is for foreclosure. Find out if there's any liens or judgments on that house. Very important, right? Then you put in the offer. Once you put in the offer, you have to worry about negotiation. Be careful with negotiating by yourself, because once again, if they know stuff about you, then they're not going to negotiate. It's going to be very tough negotiating. But if you have this wall up with a representative, then it'll be harder for them to know what cards you're playing. Then you have the contract, which goes with the attorney, and then you have closing. And once again, this is just the real estate process that we just spoke about, right? After you find a home, you're gonna wanna do an inspection on the home. An inspection is basically like a checkup. An inspection should be done every 15 years on a property anyway. The same way you go to the doctor and you get a checkup every year is the same way an inspection will tell you what's wrong with this house. So you know what you're getting into and making sure you're not buying a house that's gonna collapse the day after you close. An appraisal, the bank will use an appraisal to determine what's the real value of a home. Somebody can put a house on the market for $10 million. They're allowed to ask whatever they want. The appraisal is going to say, whoa, 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 that house is only worth $2 million. So an appraisal will always be done. A title search, your attorney will pull a title search to make sure that that person really owns that house. Believe it or not, there's a lot of people who try to sell houses in New York City who don't own their houses, right? It's very easy. They forge deeds, or they didn't know they don't own that house anymore. That's also gonna make sure there's no judgments on that house. You don't wanna buy a house that has a whole bunch of liens and judgments, because then you can inherit those liens and judgments. So that's very important. And then underwriting. Your bank is going to take your tax returns, your pay stubs, the title search, the appraisal. They're gonna take everything and say, yes, I will give money on this house. Absolutely. And then you have the closing. So this is who I am. This is what I do. Like I said, my goal is to help people achieve their real estate goals, turning renters into homeowners, homeowners into investors. And if you have any questions, I know the time is up. I thank you. I thank Google. I thank Terrence Copney. I thank Avion. And if there's any questions, I'm here to answer. Thank you.
There was something in the appendix you said someone had a question.
Anyone? Question? Oh, foreclosures. Okay. So, see, I came prepared. I had right behind it. What is a foreclosure? Now, a lot of people always ask the question, what is a foreclosure? People always think, oh, I can just buy someone's house who's in foreclosure. If someone has not foreclosed on that home, then they still own that home. That home you cannot go and take someone's home if that person still owns their home, okay? They had to have lost it in auction. Now, people can sell it if they feel they're behind and they want to get out of it before they foreclose, but until they foreclose on it, they still own it. Okay? Because there's a big difference. Pre-foreclosure, once your mortgage is due on the first of the month, the bank gives you 5 days grace period. By the 16th day, after the 15th day, you are considered late. You get a blemish on your credit report because you're 1 month behind, 30 days behind. If you fall 4 to 5 months behind, the bank files something called a lis pendens. A lis pendens is public records. You can go to the courthouse and see everyone who's listed as a lis pendens. These are people who are facing foreclosure. In New York City, this is happening across the country, but like I said, there are 30,000 people facing foreclosure in New York City. So it's so much backlog that some people are in pre-foreclosure for over 5 years, which means they have not paid their mortgage in 5 years. Once that bank files that list pendants, more than likely, they're not taking your money anymore. You try to send in, like, let's say you owe $20,000 for the 5 months, you send it, they're gonna send that money right back because now they want all their money, okay? So there's a big difference between foreclosure and pre-foreclosure. So what is actually foreclosure? Foreclosure means you lost it at auction. The time passed and the bank finally got the okay from the courthouse to foreclose. Now every state, all 50 states, have judicial foreclosure. Judicial foreclosure means if someone is facing foreclosure in pre-foreclosure, the bank, in order to get that home, they have to go to the court and follow rules and steps to get your home from you. To take a step back, when you get a loan, you get a mortgage. A lot of people say, I'm going to go get a mortgage. You don't get a mortgage, you give a mortgage. What is a mortgage? A mortgage is a promise, it's collateral, it's a promise to pay. You're basically telling the bank, you loan me this money, and I'm gonna sign this piece of paper that if I default on this loan, you can have my house back, you can have my house. So when you file, so within New York State, there's judicial foreclosure. Now remember I said every state has judicial foreclosure. Oh, okay. No, he's saying I gotta stop. Oh. I could just wrap it up real quick. Okay. Every state have judicial foreclosure. Some states have non-judicial foreclosure. Non-judicial foreclosure, New York is not a non-judicial foreclosure. Judicial means that in order for a bank to take your home if you're in pre-foreclosure, they have to go through the court system. Non-judicial means they can just send you a letter and says, give me back my house. Foreclosure means that the time has passed, the bank has granted them permission to take your home from you. Okay? Foreclosures don't look like foreclosures anymore. You know, before foreclosures used to look like abandoned houses. With 30,000 homes in foreclosure in New York City, foreclosures don't look like that anymore. They look like regular homes. You never know what a foreclosure is. And the scariest part is a lot of people are renting and paying rent to homeowners, and that homes are in foreclosure. I've seen a lot of that. I've seen a lot of people, they're paying their rent every month to their landlord, have no idea that their home is in foreclosure. Matter of fact, this woman told me the other day when I was doing another speech somewhere else that it happened to be her day off. And she saw the marshal there. And the marshal asked her for an address. And she said, wait a minute, that's my address. The marshal came to evict her. And she said, I didn't know about it. The landlord was removing, by law, they have to put the notices on the door. The landlord was removing the notices while she was at work. So if she didn't have that day off, that home would have been foreclosed on. So I just want to wrap it up real quick. Just to, you know, I do a whole course on foreclosures. So if, you know, I ever come back, then I could do it's a whole full course, understanding how did this happen, how can we fix it, how can you invest in it, where to find the foreclosures, you know, how to evaluate the distressed property. But once again, thank you. I know we're out of time. My contact is here. You can email me, call me, and if I ever come back, I'll be happy to do that course. Thank you.